Hello, everyone. Another book today at Cindy Harper Speaks, and we're going to learn about an animal today, the Hyrax. I don't know anything about the Hyrax, so let's find out together. It says the Hyrax of Top Knot Island. It's by Robin Bernard, and photography is by Jerry Lesser. Looks kind of like a squirrel and a hamster. Have you ever seen a Hyrax? No. As you read about Hyraxes, evaluate how the author tells you about them and where they live. You can't smell the ocean from Top Knot Island or hear the splash of waves or the cries of gulls. Excuse me. That's because this rocky island isn't like any other island you've ever seen. It's right in the middle of a sea of grass on the flat plains of Africa. Top Knot Island is really a group of boulders known as a kopje. Like a real island, it has its own climate, plants, and animals. I went there to study one of those animals, one that most people have heard of. It's called the Hyrax. I saw my first Hyrax on an earlier trip to Africa. I had climbed some rocks to take pictures of lizards. After a while, I got the feeling I was being watched. Sure enough, there was a furry little creature looking at me. As soon as I snapped its picture, it ran away. A moment later, it was back. This time it brought along some friends. They all lined up to stare at the two-legged animal with the camera. Maybe it was their funny smiles or bright eyes, but something made me want to find out more about them. Hyraxes aren't well-known animals. In fact, many people have never heard of them. Maybe that's because Hyraxes don't look or act as special as some other animals. Hyraxes don't have graceful horns or beautiful fur. They don't roar or run like the wind. At first glance, they look a lot like big guinea pigs. Yet to scientists, the Hyrax is a very interesting puzzle. Its stomach is like a horse's. Some of its teeth are like a hippo's. Some are like a rhino's, and some are like a rodent's. But if you ask scientists to name the Hyrax's closest relative, they will tell you it's the elephant. Clearly, Hyraxes don't look anything like elephants, but their front leg bones, feet, and brains are a lot like an elephant's. Hyraxes and elephants are also alike in other ways. Most animals that are as small as Hyraxes give birth to their babies in about 8 weeks, but a Hyrax mother needs 7.5 months to have babies. An elephant mother also takes a long time to give birth. Hyraxes and elephants have something else in common too. They both have trouble cooling down. Elephants can dunk themselves in a river or pond. They can also flap their ears to cool off. Hyraxes try to keep cool by living on a kopje. If they get too warm, they can go into the shady places between the rocks. Top Knot even has a cave where the air never gets too warm. But Hyraxes have more to worry about than elephants do. That's because Hyraxes are small enough to make an easy meal, while elephants are not. So Hyraxes always keep an eye out for danger. There's often a Hyrax standing guard on one of the kopje's highest boulders. From there, he can spot a hungry eagle a mile away. He also watches the grass for prowling leopards who are very fond of Hyrax snacks. If the Hyrax guard sees anything dangerous, he gives a high whistle. The alarm sends the whole Hyrax colony driving into the deep, dark spaces between the rocks. In seconds, there's not a Hyrax to be seen. The kopje offers more than protection to the Hyrax. It offers something else that's just as important: food. In Africa's dry season, the sun beats down and there is very little rain. The grass that covers the plains often turns brown and dies. But green plants almost always grow on Top Knot. Morning dew collects on the rocks and then trickles into the soil. Then it's soaked up by the plant roots. Top Knot's green plants attract many fur-covered and feather-covered visitors. One morning, while I was watching the Hyraxes eat their breakfast, I saw 2 giraffes picking their way along the lower rocks of the kopje. The Hyraxes seemed as surprised as I was to see the giraffes there. The giraffes stretched their long legs and long necks and stuck out their long tongues, but they still couldn't reach the leaves they wanted. Top-Knot's greenery is at the perfect level for hyraxes, which makes it too low for giraffes. After a while, the giraffes gave up and went off to nibble on a tree. After the giraffes left, the hyraxes kept munching away on their morning meal. A few minutes later, I heard squeaks and squeals right below me. Pygmy mongooses. They wiggled, jumped, and rolled over. Finally, one stopped long enough for me to take its picture. Just knowing these snake killers lived on the Kopje made me feel safer. I hadn't met a deadly snake yet, and I hoped I never would. Their poison can kill someone almost instantly. The next day, 3 tiny hyraxes appeared at the Kopje. They look more like puppies than African wild animals. I didn't spot their mother right away, but I knew she must be nearby. Aha! There she was on a ledge just a few yards away, watching every move her babies made. The cubs inched closer and closer to me. They came so near I could almost reach out and touch them. Just then, their mom decided they were getting too nosy. She gave a soft call, and immediately the cubs ran back to her side. It was a good thing she called them. I knew that people should never touch wild animals, but those fluffy cubs were hard to resist. During the summer, I spent studying the hyraxes. I found out a lot about their habits. For one thing, I learned how some hyrax cubs get so good at climbing rocks. They practice by climbing on their mothers. They may climb on her tail first, then move up her back, and then reach her neck. Finally, they may get all the way up to the top of her head. I saw one cub hop onto its mother's back many times every day. He jumped up easily, but getting down was another matter. Each time he jumped off his mom, he got better at it. In a few more days, he became very good at climbing on hyraxes. Then he was able to climb up and down the rocks easily. The hyraxes grew so used to having me around. If I just sat quietly, they nibbled flowers and leaves right near me. One day, when a female hyrax came very close to me, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. She had a few long hairs evenly spaced along her back. They were stiff, just like cat's whiskers. Later, I found out that the hairs are used as feelers. In caves and dark spaces between the rocks, these special hairs are like extra hands that help hyraxes feel where to go. Like most mammals, hyrax cubs greet each other by sniffing. I watched them do this over and over again. After sniffing, one hyrax ran a short way off and looked back at me. It seemed to be asking, "Are you ready to play?" Cubs often go nose to nose with adult hyraxes too. The grown-ups nuzzle them for a moment and then give them a gentle shove toward their playmates. Adult hyraxes hardly ever sniff each other face to face. If they do, they usually end up fighting. The adults spend most of their time fanned out or resting back to back. Lying that way helps the hyraxes in 2 ways. First of all, it helps prevent fights because the hyraxes are facing away from each other. Second, facing out means they can see in many directions. That gives the hyraxes a better chance of spotting any enemies. During the midday heat, hyraxes rest in their cool dens. When I was watching them, I took my lunch break while they rested. But one afternoon, it looked as if lunch would have to wait a while. Standing at the foot of Top Knot was a handsome, very large rhino. He was so close I could see every fringe on his ears. Luckily, he didn't notice me. When the rhino left, I climbed down to my car to get my lunch. Just as I finished eating, I thought I saw something move in a thorn tree. I looked more closely. I found a pair of yellow eyes staring back at me. It seems that I wasn't the only one eager to see the hyraxes again. A long, lean leopard was stretched out on a nearby tree limb. He waited and watched. He looked as if he was ready for a hyrax snack. The Hyraxes slowly came out of their resting places. As they did, the leopard slowly climbed down the tree. It started moving very quietly toward the kopje. I held my breath. Suddenly, one of the old male Hyraxes sounded the alarm. At almost the same moment, a herd of impalas ran across the grassy plains. The leopard glanced at the kopje once more and then turned and ran after the impalas. After all, impalas were big enough for a feast, not just a snack. I gave a big sigh of relief. When it started getting dark, I walked back to my car and climbed inside. Just then, two Hyrax cubs hopped on the roof. They peeked in at me and then they jumped off. They ran back to the kopje to play tag on the rocks. As I drove away, I thought about their narrow escape from the leopard, but I figured those cubs would probably survive most dangers. All the things that make Hyraxes easy to overlook add to their safety. Their small size and gray-brown fur help them blend in with their background. They have few enemies, and people don't hunt them for food or for their fur. And best of all, Hyraxes have the perfect home. Before I knew it, my summer at the kopje was over. When I had arrived, I was only interested in Hyraxes. By the time I left, everything on and around Top Knot Island was special to me. The kopje had become far more than a heap of rocks. It was home for some wonderful creatures, and it offered food to many others as well. But the Hyrax would always be my favorite of all the animals I had seen. I left at sunset. As I drove away, I stole a last look at Top Knot and said a silent goodbye. Well, we have learned about the Hyrax, and I hadn't heard of Top Knot Island, which is in Africa. Awesome. If you liked the Hyrax at Top Knot Island, please press like at the end, and I'll see you next time at Cindy Harper Speaks. Thanks for always tuning in. Bye for now.